Well, I want to go over the French paradox, whereby, it seems that the doctors are flabbergasted by how the French stay healthy, and they seem to do everything wrong with the fatty foods sometimes, or it seem to be fatty foods. And also, I want to talk about, differences. It's a generalization in the cultures between the United States and the French. I would think that more American women, that when they get into fitness, they really get into fitness to an extent where they're doing bodybuilding, running, or they're going to the gym all the time, and it's probably really unnecessary. It really is, to the extent that you see the thinner American women do it. But to me, this is unattractive. But some people think it is, some people don't. There's like women that are built almost like men, but I don't think that's attractive at all. But the French women, now, I mean, there's French women that are into that too. I mean, it's like I can't make a generalization here, but there's a paradox, and they call it the paradox, but it's not really a paradox. And it's usually like there's one thing or another that's coming up that's a buzzword, but it's really several things why the French are thinner in average than the Americans, especially the women too. And yet, there's not, it doesn't seem to be, if they came over here and they adopted our ways, they would probably blow up quite a bit on pounds. But it's several things. I know, they talked about the red wines. I know the French drink a lot of wine. It's like you can go out and you could buy, you can buy wine less than mineral water. You could buy it cheaper than mineral water, depending on what wine you get. You can get wine in machines all over the streets, just like it was a soda vending machine anywhere at any time. But it actually is a fairly healthy thing because the pigment in there actually has other things in it that are very nutritionally valuable. But now there's other things that are going on besides that, and also there's an overlap. I'd say there's an overlap even between the French cultures and the Japanese cultures in some ways, and that is with the fermented foods. What is in some of these fermented foods is vitamin K2, and vitamin K2 is actually in a lot of ways a protector of the heart because it directs the excess calcium that you take in your body to go into your bones versus to calcify into your heart and your arteries and your veins. That is really what's going on. Now, the other thing is, it also works. It's a number of things, though. It also works to basically, the fermented foods. They also have other things in them besides with the probiotics, where it helps you digest your food better, process your food better. So, in other words, if you're taking in the calories with all the nutrients, it's digested a lot better. Then you feel like you have better energy, and you're getting all those nutrients processed in your body. Now, I think it is good to be thin, but it isn't good to be too thin, obviously. Probably like the Audrey Hepburn type of thing is probably the ideal. That's a person that is thinner than average, but she's not anorexic. Some people would call her anorexic if you're in some places where they're used to looking at heavier people. I know, like in, some states in the United States, there's, not to knock it or anything, but, like if you're in Alabama, Mississippi, Missouri, Tennessee, whatever, even northern central Florida, a lot of people are heavier, and, if they saw a person about as thin as Audrey Hepburn, they would think she was totally anorexic. That's not really a fact, but, because you get used to looking at a different weight level that's normal by the people that right? But in actuality, anorexic is, you could tell anorexic, the bones are sticking out, that type of stuff. But the thing is, it's good to be thin, but not overdo it. Now, the thing is, when you're that type of thin, like your Audrey Hepburn type of thin, that is the type of thin where you're not going to feel depressed, you're not going to feel bad, you're not going to feel like you have a lack of energy, you're not going to feel like you have a lack of motivation, you're going to have a bright, positive attitude, that type of stuff. Now, why do they have that type of thin more in France than they do in the United States? Well, it's actually several things. I know it's the red wine, it's the Restorval that's in a wine. I'm saying that wrong, but the I actually have this supplement over here or whatever, but it's the vitamin K2 also in the fermented foods besides the probiotics. The vitamin K2 directs the calcium to go into the right place in the body. I don't think they actually know exactly everything that K2 does. It's almost like vitamin D when they first said, okay, we know vitamin D, you got to have vitamin D to prevent rickets. We also know it's important for bone health, but it's also important for your immune system. Now, what's going on today is, well, let me tell you, there's a link between vitamin D and vitamin K2. You got to have both especially if you're taking more vitamin D as a supplement. Now, some of the doctors, I got to tell you, I've been reading this stuff left and right because there's a million different opinions out there. Some people will say, and it's probably not enough. They initially said 100 mcg micrograms of K2 per 5,000 to 10,000 units of D3, which that's a real lot of D3, by the way. That's a real lot, would be adequate. But now they're saying, because a lot of doctors say don't take any more than 2,000 units. And I've also read where people experimented with 40,000 units a day, but they took a lot of K2. And I'm going to tell you why it's important to take both, because actually it's related to, well, I'll tell you how it works with rat poison, because it's amazing. That's how dangerous D3 in large amounts could be if you don't take enough K2. But D3 is also something that works very powerful for repairing your cells and your immune system too. But if you have a lot of D3 by itself without any K2, it will cause calcification of your arteries and heart, and also probably give you kidney stones too, which is pretty bad. But you don't want your heart being calcified, that's for sure. Now, as far as what they did with rat poison, what they do is they use a K2 blocker. So the K2 blocker, when they put this in rat poison, so it's like you have no K2 at all, and they give you a load of D3. And what that does is it actually calcifies the heart and the arteries, and it kills the rats. So people that are taking a lot of D3 as a supplementation, that's very dangerous to do if you're doing a lot of that when you're not taking any K2. And I don't want to tell you exactly what to do with this supplement stuff, but I'm just warning you that, moderation is probably a watchword. Now, the one I think that is pretty damn safe to do with quite a bit of is vitamin C, as long as it's not ester C, because that has a lot of calcium in it. But the other types were just plain, and I know it's better to take the natural form of C, the natural form of any vitamin, and actually in C, you could probably get away with the regular ascorbic acid. I'm just saying that because, as a side note, because the stuff gets expensive, and I don't sell this stuff here or nothing like that, and I'm just trying to say, if you want to spend, buying the Chemu C, and that could be many times more money than just plain ascorbic acid, but that's a separate subject. But with vitamin D also, besides, the bone health, it actually repairs cells and rejuvenates cells. It'll tell cancer cells to either repair themselves or self-destroy themselves, believe it or not. But if you take a lot of D3 and you don't have adequate amount of K2, it will cause calcification of the heart and arteries. And actually, I think allegedly that's what Jack LaLanne had a problem with. If he was taking loads of K2, they didn't know about this stuff back then, he probably would have made it over 100. But he did live a long time, that's for sure. But the other thing is, there's a lot of different factors involved in that. And actually, the Japanese have a lot of K2 in their diet because of the fermented foods. Natto. Now, natto is a cheese, but it's not a cheese from milk. But it's a cheese that is from soy, fermented soy. But the French have various fermented cheeses. So in other words, you're getting the probiotics, but you're also getting a lot of vitamin K2. You can also get K2 from butter oil. Butter oil. You could get butter oil as a supplement. It's a very expensive supplement. You could, but K2 as a supplement is not that expensive. Now here's a caveat. Now I'm showing a cigarette for a reason here because I'm just going to give you a side note. There's been instances, even in Japan, where people have smoked cigarettes all their life, and they're over 100 years old, and hardly have any wrinkles, and they feel great. I don't know. I don't want to tell you that it's okay to smoke, but obviously they're doing something to counteract this cigarette smoking. That's working, and they don't know what it is, But it may also be even the iodine in a diet. The iodine is mainly coming from the high seafood, and the French eat a lot of seafood too. Maybe not as much as the Japanese, but probably more so than Americans. But it's not probably just one thing. It's the red wine, it's the K2, it's the probiotics and the fermented foods, it's the seafood, it's the lifestyle, and everything else. But the French stay thinner and healthier without being addicted to, I mean, I don't want to make a generalization here, but, you probably will see less French women being totally addicted to, like, jogging every day or something like that, going to the gym every day or something, and they'll be thinner or something without, almost like effortlessly. Now, I'm going to tell you that even back in the 40s, they even had a brand of cigarette in America. Now, I don't know what his brand is. I forgot the name of the brand. I read so much stuff, I can't remember everything I read, but it is something I saw. It was really legit. They had a brand of cigarette in America that actually had iodine in it, with no taste of iodine. It just had a little bit in it to, like, supposedly counteract the bad effects of the cigarette smoke, because they knew the nicotine in the cigarettes, even in the 40s, was bad. Even though in the 50s they'd say doctors recommend Camel and all that garbage. Well, that brand went by the wayside, even though it had high quality tobacco, and I don't know why people wouldn't smoke it as much and why it went out. Maybe there was a conspiracy there someplace. I don't know. But iodine actually is another thing that's in a lot of seafood, and it does protect your body by detoxifying bad elements in the body, heavy metals. It also detoxifies fluoride, the artificial preservatives, a lot of stuff. Even boron does that, which can be in the soil from plants. So I'm kind of telling you a bunch of stuff over here besides the K2. And boron is a cheap supplement. I have a separate video on that, but that's like 300 pills from, I don't sell this stuff, but I get it from Swanson Vitamins. It's like 300 of them for 300 day supply for like $5, I think it is, or $5 or $6. That one actually is pretty cheap. Normally you can get it from the diet in a diet, but you know what? They've been saying even since the 30s in the United States that the soils in the United States have been depleted of nutrients vastly. Back from the 30s. So, it's like, they sell stuff by the pound in, when it goes to market, with whatever they're selling, whatever type of vegetables. They want to grow it as big as possible because it's, it's priced by the pound. It's not like how nutrient dense it is. It's how much the product weighs, So, we're not getting the same quality of food like back in the 1800s or something was homegrown. I mean, I guess if you bought vegetables from the Amish or something in Pennsylvania and they used horse manure for all their vegetables, you're probably getting really good vegetables then. You probably wouldn't need to take one supplement then at any time, plus if you had seafood. But the French stay slimmer without trying for it's not, I know sometimes, the Europeans look at the Americans and say, well, they're lazy, I don't think it's that. I think it's the Americans sometimes are way overstressed, too. That's another thing. People are working like 50-something hours a week, typically, or more, 7 days a week, like me. And it's like people are not, even relaxing. So that actually sometimes, has a problem where you actually gain weight, too. But the thing is, the diet has a real lot to do with it, and it's like the doctors at first were saying, oh, they got a high fat content in their diet. This is unhealthy. But how come they're thinner, they're healthier, they have less heart attacks, less incidence of cancer, and all this other stuff? Well, that's what's going on. At first, they thought it was the red wine, but no. It was the fermented cheeses. It's the probiotics in there, the vitamin K2. Now, also, I want to tell you something else as a side note. Besides, the Japanese even have some of this stuff, the fermented foods, the fermented cheeses, and the iodine in the seafoods and the kelp. And there was a village in Japan. I forgot what the heck the name of it was, but it was nicknamed the Village of Long Life. It was even on, I think, ABC News or something like 13 years ago, 2002 or something. And they didn't know why these people, there's so many people that are, like, not everybody would make it over 100, but there's a lot of people well over 100 years old. They hardly had any wrinkles on their skin. There'd be people out there fishing on fishing boats. They wouldn't get skin cancer, even though they're out there in the sun. I mean, yeah, they had a hat and they had covered up sleeves, but, the sun was reflecting on the water left and right. They wouldn't, I don't know, I mean, but then what they started thinking it was from hyaluronic acid in the vegetables that they're eating. But it could have been a lot of different things. It might have been the hyaluronic acid. It might have been a lot of trace elements that were in the vegetables through the soil. And, this is one of the reasons not to eat processed foods as much as possible and support your local farmer. Because there's too many things they don't understand about, even the best. Like, I'm not going to claim to know everything about something, but I can tell you one thing. When you looked at the best of the best, when they found out that vitamin D, you needed vitamin D to prevent rickets, and they used to tell kids to go out in the sun all the time. That was the way to get vitamin D. They didn't give them a supplement or anything. They used to have their kids go out in the sun all the time to prevent rickets. Well, it's like they don't know everything there is about the vitamin. Now they're going to finding out that it does more than that. It helps to regulate, not just to prevent rickets, but where the calcium goes. So it can actually, in other words, it regulates, that's the K2. The vitamin D also regulates the immune system. It also says if there's, it can help cells to repair themselves. It can help cells that can't be repaired they'll be automatically destroyed, so they don't freaking remultiply, which can be effective again working against cancer. Now at the K2, it's effective because it tells the calcium where to go. But there's a number of things they probably don't understand about K2 that will be determined later on. But they do realize that K2 is extremely important, because if you take a lot of vitamin D, say, as a supplementation, you're taking 5,000 or 10,000 units a day, which is, by some people say that's not too much. Then most doctors will say 2,000 units a day is the limit. But if you take too much vitamin D without having adequate amounts of K2, what it'll cause is calcification of the blood and heart. It'll actually cause more harm than good. But there's been people that have been taking massive amounts of D3 with no harm at all. And they claim it's because they're taking a lot of K2 with it. Now, I can tell you this. The way they work with rat poison is like, I don't know if I said this already, but they use a blocker, a K2 blocker in the rat poison, which causes all the calcium to go into the arteries versus the bones. And then they also put massive amounts of D, so it causes more calcium to be processed into the body. And without the K2, with having a K2 blocker, it causes all that calcium to go into the arteries versus the bones. So, if you're going to take a lot of extra supplements, you got to be careful that everything's balanced out right. And I really don't want to give the exact amounts because it's changing all the time. Now, I read that one doctor was talking about, because I read the doctors, I don't look at what the but they vary. They vary. Now, one doctor was saying that I'm not going to tell you the names because it's like I don't want to be rehash. I don't think I should say their names, but and there's so many I've read. I try to get a broad base of everything, but some were saying that if you had 100 micrograms mcg of K2, that would be enough K2 to work with 5,000 to 10,000 units of vitamin D3. But if you now they're saying you have to have 100 micrograms mcg of K2 per 1,000 units of D3. That's a hell of a lot of K2. And, probably the French are getting that, and probably the Japanese are getting that. But it's not just one thing. I mean, like I said, it's the probiotics, that are naturally in the food. It's the ketones in the oils, too. The ketones, looks like in coconut oil, is one of the best sources of ketones. But it's a kind of like diet that doesn't make you feel sluggish. You have more alertness. Your brain you don't have any brain fog. You feel more alert. You're more vibrant. You have good energy. And, when Americans are going on diets, they feel like, they're going to die, That's what's going. I mean, they got no energy, they got no energy. And it only lasts for so long. So, and then they get off of it, right? But really, what's going on? And, actually here in the United States, people were a lot thinner in 1960. There's no doubt about that. Not that many years ago. Was that 55 years ago? Hey, 1960, people were a lot thinner, just in the United States. And, there's plenty of food, and there was, burger places and fast food restaurants and all that around galore, right? The drive-in movie theaters and popcorn and all that garbage. But I guess people weren't going to it. I mean, they had more regular food, though, and no microwave food, too. So, probably what's going to happen is everything's going to go full circle, and it's just going to change. It's just going to change back. In other words, change back to the way it was. And if we use the internet and common sense and everything we learned in the past, and we have the avenues of not just communication, but transportation and better methods to grow food, we could probably be healthier, more vibrant than we've ever been as a race of people without all the fancy medical stuff, which probably the doctors won't like and the pharmaceuticals won't like, but too bad, just being a little common sense, because, this information was known way back when in a lot of ways, but not everybody knew it. Now, everybody can get this information if they want to. The problem is, it's a matter of, I guess it's kind of a little difficult to get things that are natural today, that are real food, versus some of the stuff that we got today. But everybody can get the right information and maybe grow their own food, which will be the situation that you need to change. And, it's not a matter of going out to the gym every day. I mean, sometimes I like that because it's, for me, myself, personally, going to the gym, because I feel like that the endorphins, I like the way that makes me feel, but you don't have to do that to be thin. You don't have to do that to be thin at all. So anyway, just figured I'd pass this on because that K2 vitamin is probably, it's going to be a new buzzword here pretty soon, but it's not the answer. It's, it's iodine, it's the probiotics, it's the D3, it's the vitamin C, it's the red wine, it's the hyaluronic acid in the foods. It's a lot of different things. But what it's coming right down to is like, they try to boil it down to one thing, and it's a buzzword, and it's a mixture. We just got to go back to common sense and grassroots, the way things were, and people will be living healthier. But, today I think with the knowledge we have where we could spread the right knowledge and we got the right transportation, we got the machinery to, grow food faster and everything. We could be living in pretty much a healthy utopia and without actually, having to have a $1 billion health industry, billions and billions of a health industry. It's more just a common sense thing that could be going on. I know what happens though. The professional money yo-yos are always looking for angles to freaking sell people stuff, and that's not what I'm doing here. I'm just telling you common sense, and I even like to leave you with this thought because, it's it seems like even unhealthy things are not that bad if you're doing everything else right. That's been proven a lot of times too in the Japanese cultures and the French cultures, with longevity, where people have been doing things that seem to be unhealthy, and yet they're probably counteracting it with a lot of things that were so healthy for them that the unhealthy things didn't matter that much. And because not everybody's going to be doing everything perfect, so let's be realistic about this. But as long as people are mainly, well, you do what you want, but to me, I'd rather feel good and have a clear head and live a long life and feel good the entire life than feel bad. So it's just common sense. So, anyway, I figured just put this out here real quick because the paradox is not really a paradox. It's something that is known now, but they don't know the whole story. But, it's good to examine why certain cultures are doing well in health, in thinness, in vibrance, in vitality. And over here in the United States, we're getting stressed out, and it's not our fault. It's like we're being snowed by the big corporate freaking people that are telling you, buy this quick meal and buy these quick pizza things you pop in a microwave or something. Yeah, it's killing you. That's what's going on. So we got to go back to common sense. That's all there is to it.